Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about industrialization. In the last lesson, we learned about how industrialization was a factor in urbanization. So, here we're going to talk a little bit about what industrialization is. So, industry expands. Edwin Drake creates a steam engine that removes oil from Earth. The Bessemer process turns iron into steel, which leads us to skyscrapers. We see the invention of the typewriter by Christian Scholes. Sorry, that was Christopher Scholes. The invention of the telephone by Alexander Graham Bell. The invention of the light bulb, electrical power, and power plants by Thomas Edison. And cheaper and safer electricity by George Westinghouse. So, as previously mentioned, this helps push towards urbanization, the move to cities, and an improved standard of living. So here's examples of a telephone, a light bulb, and one of the first typewriters. Another major contribution to urbanization and industrialization is the creation of railroads. In 1869, the first transcontinental railroad is completed, connecting New York to California. We see these built by immigrant laborers, mostly the Chinese on the West Coast. And then in 1883, we see standardized time and time zones created. New towns developed on rail lines so they can move away from rivers. In 1880, Pullman, Illinois was created by the Pullman Company. They owned the entire town and the town's factory. The Credit Mobilier Company is formed to steal money from the railroad, the Union Pacific Railroad investors, which is a scandal for President Grant, who is a Republican. So here we have a picture of Pullman and a picture of a early Pullman railroad car. So, Grangers demand control of the railroads. They want state regulation of railroads. In Monville, Illinois, the court ruled in favor of Granger laws. In 1887, the Interstate Commerce Act said that the federal government could supervise railroad activities. They wanted to lower excessive rates being charged. And then, Panic 1893, control of the railroads goes to few wealthy people. So we see railroads start with many companies and slowly get consolidated into smaller and smaller groups of people until you have just a few wealthy people. So here's a picture of another train and the Internet State Commerce Commission seal. So we see time zones created. We have four major time zones in the continental United States at this time, which is Eastern, Central, Mountain, and Pacific. Alaska and Hawaii are not states at this time and are not even part of the United States, so they come in later. But this is the first time in our history that clocks are regulated. So, big business, we see the rise of four major uh, industrial leaders at this time. We have Cornelius Vanderbilt, who controlled the railroad, John D. Rockefeller, who controlled the Standard Oil Company, Andrew Carnegie, who controlled steel through vertical integration and horizontal consolidation, and J.P. Morgan, who ran banking and finance as well as steel. And if you go into New York City, you can find buildings with the names of each of these people. So, business. At this time, we had social Darwinism. Government control of business was little. They followed laissez faire economics, which meant there was little government regulation or interference. Companies can do what they want, the government does not get involved. We see increase in trust and monopolies. And then the robber barons became philanthropists who make large contributions to society. So, again, if you go to New York City, you can see Carnegie Hall, a theater. You can see the Vanderbilt School of Business. You can find Center in central Manhattan and other large institutions named after these giants of industry. So here we have a political cartoon showing big business. They usually show them as fat old men because at this time being overweight was a symbol of and greed. So Rockefeller forms trust, the Standard Oil Trust, which um, we get the 1890 Sherman Antitrust Act, which shows that you cannot intertrade, but this is hard to enforce. So you see, the North is still industry based, but the South is still agricultural based. You still see, but there is some industry in the South. Here we have a picture of the Antitrust Act. So at this point, workers begin to organize. Workers are dealing with long hours, hard labor, and little pay. In 1868, we see the creation of the National Labor Union. And in 1868, we also see the creation of the Knights of Labor. We see the um, creation of the American Federation of Labor, which was created by Samuel Gompers, who brought us what's called collective bargaining, a union led by Eugene V. Debs. He's a socialist who believed in the equal distribution of wealth, saying that um, workers should not be working hard so that the bosses are the only ones getting high pay. In 1905, we see the industrial workers of the world, the Wobblies. This is a radical unionist and socialist group held by William Big Fall Haywood. We see the coal miners organizer, Mary Harris Mother Jones, which you see pictured here. You can even find a news outlet called Mother Jones, which is based on uh, workers' union rights. You see the creation of the ILGWU, led by Pauline Newman, which is created because of New York City Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, where 146 female workers died. We will have a deeper lesson when we look at this tragedy and see how workers pushed for government regulation. And then finally, we see the 1877 Great Strike in the railroads. At this time, President Hayes sent in troops. Haymarket Square riot turned violent, and Hayes loses public support. The Homestead Strike violence due to scabs. Scabs are people who come work for cheap and replace unionized workers. And then we see the Pullman Strike of 1894, where strike breakers were hired. These are people that are hired to break the strike. Again, they're to undermine the collective efforts of workers. So here we have a picture of soldiers dispersing the ARU strikers and sympathizers at 49th Street, Chicago. Chicago is a big name when it comes to unions, as well as New York City. So, in response, the government limited unions' powers. The Sherman Antitrust Act restricts unions' actions, could not interfere with interstate trade. It makes it difficult for unions to get strength. And we'll talk more about unions as we go on in this unit. That is all for today. I will see everyone next video.